Okay.
I said, I was just thinking to myself, like,
Right.
you're telling me that the highlight of my life, like what I aspire to be, is a wife, like to marry a footballer. I want to be an archaeologist. I've read these books. I've put work into it.
Yeah.
No. And so I stood up and I said, I want to be an archaeologist. And I remember my teacher took me out into the porch and she was like, you can't be doing this. And there was a gay flamboyant boy in my class called Aidan, and he's great.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, and I want to be a singer. And I was like, yes, revolution.
Welcome to Ireland Unfiltered. This week's guest is Jordanne Jones. Jordanne's new film, Metal Heart, is out this week. It's a really touching and warm story about two sisters who take very different paths in life and who, during the course of the film, discover they have a lot more in common than they imagined. Jordanne is an extraordinary actor, and I think that she's going to be a major figure in Irish film and beyond for a long time to come. She's 18 years old and she's an extraordinarily wise person. That sounds patronising, but I don't mean it to be. She was fascinating to listen to about acting, what it does for her, and also her own mental health difficulties and her own activism. And also, most importantly, and she's asked me to stress this, how cool she is, which was a theme she really wanted to ram home. Before we get to that interview, don't forget to subscribe to Ireland Unfiltered on all the usual channels. And if you like the show, please leave a review. Jordanne, welcome to Ireland Unfiltered.
Thank you.
Metal Heart, your new film, it opens this week.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's very different to what I've done before. It's really lighthearted, coming of age film about two twin sisters that are completely different in style, their way of thinking, their way of life. And it's about their relationship when they're left alone for the summer. Their parents go on holidays for 6 weeks, and they're left to their own devices, and they get up to all sorts, some trouble as well. And it's a really nice film.
It's wonderful. Like, it's Hugh O'Conor directs his first film. A lot of people might know Hugh, and it's written by Paul Murray, who wrote Skippy Dies. So there's a whole bunch of talent involved in it.
Definitely.
And it's a really touching film. But it's I wonder if you tell us about how, like you say, it's an upbeat film. How did your role, because you're one of two sisters, two twins, you say. Chantal is your sister, and you're Emma, who's a goth, is that?
Goth, yeah.
And is that how the role was envisaged, and how did it evolve over the course of the shoot?
Well, yeah, when I first read the script, obviously, like I said, they're left to their own devices and they get up to all sorts, and some of what they get up to might seem a bit dangerous or... so when I read the script, I initially read it as a much darker role that was, probably going to be a bit emotionally draining to do or whatever. But it turns out to be a lot more lighthearted. So the role of Emma being a goth isn't so dark. It's more just about her being young and misunderstood. So...
And that was the thing that, so, and was that something you consciously changed, or was it something that just evolved?
It's definitely just something that evolved. Because Hugh done an amazing job of capturing this world that it's very generic and stylized. It's not really based anywhere. It could really be anywhere. So I think the more I got to see the world and how kind of blurry and colourful and playful it was, the role of Emma kind of became more fun than dark.
Right.
But yeah, so she's just a young teen trying to find herself. So
on the summer before she goes to college.
Yeah.
And when you say, like, it's different to all the a lot of the other roles you've had. Like, you have had already in your career an awful lot of roles that are very serious. And is that something that has happened naturally, or is it something you sought out?
It's something I sought out because, like, as far as I can remember from a really young age, I've been desperate to be an actor. Like I was always at my mum to get me into acting, to make it happen, because I had such a fear that it wouldn't.
Right.
And now looking at the roles that I've done and what they've done for me, I've realised that they've definitely been an emotional support for me and an outlet.
Yeah.
Because I would have struggled with my mental health quite a bit growing up. So the roles that I've chosen to do and have done, I've definitely realised that they meant a lot more than just playing out a role. They've done something for me too. So, you know, like the first feature I done, I Used to Live Here, was about a young girl named Amy who, you know, was suffering with suicidal ideation and her mental health. And I got to almost take control of my emotions and my mental health and take them and use them for my acting and play it on screen, which really helped me and my mental health. So I definitely feel like I've gone for those type of roles on purpose and for a reason, and they're definitely what I enjoy doing. I love doing Metal Heart. It was definitely out of my comfort zone, but it's definitely made me gain that bit more of confidence in acting and going for different roles and genres.
Well, that's interesting, because like talking to people about you and about your, like how you play Emma in Metal Heart, and you are the kind of heart and soul of the film. They said one of the things that's remarkable about you is that if you're on the set, it can look, and I've read this an awful lot about great actors. Like if you're on the set, you can sometimes see them and you think nothing is happening, and then you see it on screen, and it's all there.
Yeah.
And when I read that, when somebody said that to me about you, I wonder, like, that must take a huge amount of confidence to think, like, because if I was acting, which would be very bad anyway, but if I was acting, I would be so determined to make sure everybody knew that I was doing something that I'm sure I would overact. So, like, where does that confidence come from to know that I don't need to push it too far? It will be fine on the screen.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Owen McLaughlin, who actually was the cameraman on set, had said to me, you know, at the start, he was actually kind of quite annoyed at me, like, come on, Jordanne, like, you're meant to be doing something. Right. The camera's about to be rolling in a second. Yeah. He goes, but then, like, he put full trust in me because he noticed that every time the camera was rolling, I could just jump into character and do what I was doing. And I didn't realise that that's actually what I was doing.
Right.
And I thought it was very funny that he said that to me. So then I start to acknowledge it more and understand, like, my way of getting into my role. And the thing with me is I don't necessarily play a character. I always try find a version of myself that would be Emma. Right. So so I kind of just sit back, relax, and try find that in myself. And it's a really, like I said, it's been a great emotional support for me. And me sitting down and, you know, studying the role and kind of finding that version of myself in me is therapeutic.
Is it?
Yeah, and it has definitely made me more self-aware. Like so instead of playing a different character and playing a version of myself that would be Emma, it has definitely made me more self-aware and understand myself more. And it's definitely, it's much more than acting for me.
So do you find sometimes when you say you play a version of yourself, do you find out about versions of yourself that you didn't even know were there?
Yeah, it's great fun. And I feel like, you know, I really try to put myself in that position. So, like, I'm not reacting to a certain situation as Emma. I'm reacting as myself in Emma's situation. Right. With Emma's circumstances and, you know, her background. And I've done the same for rebellion and resistance. And I really tried to put myself in that position that my character was playing, whether it was, you know, Minnie, who's living in poverty, trying to provide for her family in rebellion. And I became extremely empathetic towards the ordinary people living in the troubles, having to do that. So I feel like that benefited my role as well.
Talk to me then about always wanting to be an actor. Like, I read that you used to drag your grandfather out and watch, you know, make him watch you perform, and then you'd kind of corral your cousins in for plays that you direct them in. Yeah. Like, where did that, like, from what age was that?
Like as early as I can remember. Right. I really don't know where it came from because none of my family or friends were actors, and it kind of almost seemed like it wasn't a real thing because you're watching it on telly and it's not really outside of the TV world. So that's why I had such a fear in me from a young age, because it seemed too, like, far-fetched and it seemed like it could never actually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my dad, I remember, was a huge film buff that
Right.
showed me all the classics. Alfred Hitchcock. Our favourite movie was American Werewolf.
Okay.
So I think, you know, and he wouldn't just sit back and enjoy a film, he would like analyse it and break
Right,
it down,
okay.
and we'd have great conversations. So I think it just maybe came from there. My dad showing me all these great films and really being inspired by them. But yeah, I had loads of cousins, thankfully, so I could use them all to my advantage to put on a great show.
And what role were you playing in the
lead?
The lead, yeah. You never,
Yeah,
never took a step back.
I would write and direct and lead, and they didn't have a say in it.
Right, okay.
No, they were great. Like, all my cousins are really, you know, energetic. They have so much character and personality, and they're really creative. So I was really lucky in that sense that they would put up with me writing, and they would take part in it, and they all really enjoyed it. Especially my younger cousins, they loved doing it. So, and then we'd perform it then in front of my family.
Right. And were you a performer, like, were you confident as a kid?
I don't know whether I'd say that I had confidence, but I was definitely really shy. Kind of kept to myself, and I'd have like one friend or very few friends. I used to just spend a lot of time drawing by myself or painting, and my mum always says that she thought I was a little strange kid.
Right. Yeah.
But I think I enjoyed that, being on my own. I don't remember feeling like lonely or like left out
But then in the acting, like, desire seemed like, where
it was too strong.
Right.
Like, it was too strong. So like, even performing in front of my family or dragging my granddad out to the backyard just to sing a song or put on a show or a play, I was nervous. And you know, it's, you know, when your family are like at a like family event, you're like, oh, look at little Molly, look at her singing this song, get up. And she's like, no, I'm too shy, I'm too nervous. Like, I was that child,
right,
like, but the passion and the desire to be an actor was too strong.
Right.
And I just felt like if I kept doing it and I proved to everyone that I wanted to be a performer and showed them that this is what I loved, then it would happen. So I kept doing it.
And why what did you think was going to happen through acting, or was there anything as conscious as that? Like, when you had that desire, what did you feel it would give you?
It's just, I can't even put words on it. It was just always really fulfilling for me, and I enjoyed it. And I definitely, the biggest thing with acting for me is it definitely was like an emotional support. And I think maybe because I was quiet, and you know, this was kind of like my outlet, my way of expressing myself. And yeah, it just brought me joy, and it was just like a hobby. And yeah.
And do you think it was because you were like, you know, happy in your, you know, content to be on your own, content that you had this sort of fantasy land, if you like, that you could then project when you started acting? You had it all in your head, things you wanted to say, or people you wanted to be, or versions of yourself you wanted to project. Yeah,
I was always thinking and in my own little world. And yeah, definitely like living in a fantasy, and then every now and then, bam, I'm in the kitchen with the whole family sitting down, and I'm performing what I've been thinking of for weeks. Yeah. And
we might come back to that in terms of, because like that sense of thinking about things, and you know, I know you talked about your mental health, and I know like you suffered with anxiety, and I've suffered from anxiety a lot in my life, and I always think it is a kind of disease of thinking, like it's just too much thinking. But there are times then when all that thinking in the other side of things, you know, you can turn it into something creative. Or
there's a quote from Kurt Cobain where he says, thank you for your tragedy, it helped me with my art. And although sometimes I'm like, I'd give it all up just to be normal, and you know, and not think so much, and but I wouldn't, because it means too much to me, and I just want to give. And whether that's through my acting or through my art, because I like to paint as well, and making something great, it feels like my purpose, and it's very rewarding for me.
So tell me then about, I used to live here, because were you 12 when that, and your mum saw an ad for it, is that right?
Yeah, there was an audition being held in my local community centre,
Which is in Kilnarden.
which is 5 minutes from my home.
Right.
And there was a post on Facebook, and obviously my mum could see
Yeah.
that this was for me. So she just told me, and I went down with my friends, and I remember I was kind of laughing and joking with them, but this meant like a whole lot to me,
Right.
but they didn't know that.
Okay.
And then
And did they go to audition as well?
yeah.
But
So my friend David Flynn, who's in
Yeah.
Michael Inside,
Right. Oh,
and he
yeah.
was also in I Used to Live Here. We were good friends
Yeah.
and went down together.
Okay.
And we're kind of laughing and joking with each other, like, it's not a big deal kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I went in on my own, and I was like,
Right.
this is my time. Yeah, little did they know.
So you're like one of those people who kind of claims they're not studying
Yeah.
for exams, but you actually sort of secretly you
Yeah,
were ready.
that was me. Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you went in, and what happened in the audition then when you went like that?
I actually remember it really clearly. I was reading the script. I was reading the role of Amy, the lead, and then I had my friend Ryan Moore, who was reading David's part, and Frank Berry was there, and I remember he was really serious, and I was just, I was thinking of all my favourite directors like Martin Scorsese and all these, and I was just like, director, like they're the same.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is crazy. And so I was very, very nervous. And I could hear my voice shake. And I actually got the call the next day or 2 days later to say that I had got it.
Yeah.
So it was very quick, but I just remember going home and not being able to sit comfortably, like,
Right.
did I get it, did I not? I just was like, this is so important to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really nervous, and I remember it really well. And I even remember the scene as well that we read from.
Gee, what was it?
Yeah. So Ryan, my friend, was reading David's part,
Okay.
the part that David got, and he's like trying to talk to me from my window.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even think that ended up in the film then,
okay.
but yeah, I do remember.
And had you started acting classes at that stage?
No, never.
So that was your first.
Yeah.
Like, what acting had you done apart from at
So
home?
I done theatre in school, so we didn't do like theatre classes.
Yeah.
We were just given a script,
Right.
told to learn it, and then we'd show up to the theatre on the night that, we'd probably practice like with each other, like the students, but it wasn't like classes or training or anything. And then we'd perform it in the theatre, in the Civic Theatre in Tala. Just our family friends would come. It was just kind of a small thing, other schools. So I think I only done one or two of them before. No, one of them. Yeah, one of them plays before I auditioned for I Used to Live Here. And but after I Used to Live Here, I got a scholarship in Bow Street in Smithfield, and there I done acting classes.
Right. But so your first real experience of acting was for I Used to Live Here and for filming that.
Yeah.
So like that's a pretty going in like at a pretty high level.
Yeah.
And having to learn on the job. Were you daunted, or were you so like, because you were a kid, were you just thinking this is normal?
Well, I definitely wasn't thinking this is normal. There was a camera, and there was a script, and there was cast and crew, and so I definitely didn't think it was normal. But it wasn't daunting for me. It was daunting during the audition of, is this going to happen for me or is it not? But once I knew that it was happening, like I said, my passion and my drive to be an actor was just too strong to set me back, or for my nerves to overcome me. So I it was very much like went very smoothly for me, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
And then when you started in Smithfield, like, was that then, this is the path now for me?
I still didn't think so. Because I remember where I used to live here, I went to Czech Republic Film Festival, and I remember kind of panicking a little bit, because I felt like this was just such an amazing experience for me. I was being recognised and rewarded for acting, something that I love to do. So that was like insane for me.
Yeah.
And I was in Czech Republic's Lynn Film Festival, and people were coming to watch my film and asking for my autograph and congratulating me. And I just felt like I had to take it all in, because I thought this was going to happen. This was the only time it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I got really lucky, and I done this film. It's something I'll be able to tell people.
Yeah.
But so even when I went to Bow Street, I was still convinced that, you know, this is almost like it was too good to be true, and you know, I'm not good enough to like for it to continue for me. But luckily it did, and I'm so thankful. I've definitely gained more confidence in knowing that this is what I do, and people think I'm good. So
But then the roles kept coming.
yeah, they kept coming.
So like, was that something like? Did you have any concerns at that stage, or like that? You know, this is going to be something that was going to take you away from maybe school or anything like that, or no?
No,
No.
I was hoping
Okay.
it would.
Right. But did your mum have any concern? Did anyone say like?
Yeah, I'm sure my mum had concern, like, because, you know, I did miss a bit of school,
Yeah.
Especially when I was filming Resistance and Rebellion, because I would have been in secondary school, and then I was filming Resistance during my leaving cert year, 6th year. So, but no, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and whatever I do, I like to put my all into everything that I do. So I was doing the same with school as I was with acting, and my mum trusted that I was putting enough work into both of them and keeping that balance. So yeah, and even still in college, like I have an amazing agent, Jonathan. I'm with Lisa Richards' agency, and he's amazing at like negotiating, scheduling around my college life.
And then of
acting.
course, and you asked me not to mention this, but
Right.
then of course it's June and you were in the library in Trinity today. So like you do seem to make up for lost time, do you? If you can.
I just love books.
So you're in second year, you've just finished second year in Trinity.
Yeah.
Doing English and
film.
Film, right.
Yeah.
And so you were in the library.
I was in the library today looking at books of Whitman. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I love books, and I'm finally getting to read for pleasure again
Right.
during the summer. So I've just gone through 2 books. Call Me by Your Name, which was amazing. I haven't seen the film, and I don't want to, because the world in the book was just so magical. And then The Princess Bride. I had seen that film. It's my friend Paul's favorite film, and he showed me, and it's a classic. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I read that, and then I was just looking around for another book.
Right. Okay.
No big deal.
No big deal. I didn't think it was a big deal. You were the person who was saying, "Don't mention that."
Yeah, because
like,
I'm Emmett.
Oh,
I'm Emmett, the goth,
the
the cool
cool.
goth.
Oh,
she
I
wouldn't be in
see.
the library, you know. I'm trying to.
See. Oh, you're trying to stay in
God,
row.
you're ruining my image.
Sorry, no, you are very cool. And it was like everyone was amazed to hear someone this cool could be in the library in June. So just to confirm that you know, that no cool, you're not shedding any coolness. But like the acting then, like Barry Keoghan, when we had him on the show, said that when he first did it, he got a feeling from acting that he even though he wanted to do it and he was doing other things, he was boxing. I think you boxed a bit.
Yeah, I boxed. Yeah.
He was doing these things, but when he started acting, he had a feeling, and he said in the first film he did, and it was even just 3 or 4 seconds of a feeling, and he said he just wanted that again.
Yeah, I know it. I know what he's talking about.
What is it?
I can't even. You just know that it's right, and you're doing what you really want to do. It really just feels like a purpose.
Yeah.
And it's really fulfilling and satisfying, and I can even, like, when you were even talking to me there about the feeling, it just clicked with me. I know what he's talking about.
Is it a release of things? Is it just a sense of there's nothing else going on in your world?
There's nothing else going on. And I did get somewhat of that feeling in boxing, you know, because my mum would record me boxing in the ring, and she'd be screaming, "Go on, JJ, go on, JJ," and I'd look back on her phone, I'd be like, I didn't even hear you.
Right.
Because I'm so in the moment. So I definitely love acting. I've definitely gotten a great feeling, and from other things I've done, like art and boxing. But acting just nothing can compare. It's just what I'm meant to do.
And is that different then? Because you say the roles you've done, like, had because of the various like heavy roles, that there was a therapeutic aspect to them. But is that something different to that sense of release? Because if you're like, it must be something conscious if you're doing roles that involve, like, you know, crisis pregnancies and things like that. Yeah. That's slightly different maybe to the sense of release you get just when you're acting, is it? Do you know what I mean?
Like the difference between release and like therapeutic.
The release and, well, the release you might get in the moment versus consciously deciding I want to do something about certain issues.
Yeah, so sometimes, like, the feeling can come during or after. Especially for like you said, like crisis pregnancy, for heartbreak.
Yeah.
That was a bit different. Because at the time, I was scared. So no, that feeling probably wasn't present.
Right. Why are you scared?
Because the amendment was happening at the same time that was being filmed, and I couldn't vote, which was also really scary because I would have been 16 filming Heartbreak, and
you were campaigning.
I was campaigning and canvassing, and I was, because I've always been into activism, and I've always been an activist and tried to be as politically aware as I could, and my mum would always bring me to protests from a young age, and I used to love the atmosphere of it, going to protests and the energy and community, but it became less of a hobby and because I became more aware, and especially aware of the things that affect me in my life, like the 8th Amendment. It became scary. So for Heartbreak, I didn't do the role because I wanted that feeling,
right, of
that feeling that I love that acting brings me. It was because I was scared, and I wanted to help send a message. And so Heartbreak was definitely different.
And but was there any therapeutic element in the sense, or did you feel you've contributed somewhat?
I've contributed, I would have felt that, that kind of, well, at least I'm doing something. I can't vote, but I can encourage other people to vote for me and other girls that can't.
Taking me back then to like the activism. Like I saw a quote from you saying that you remember taking a microphone from a community worker at a protest once, and you'd adapted Nightmare on Elm Street theme tune to a chant about Brian Cowan and child benefit.
Yeah.
So like you were pretty engaged from an early age.
Yeah.
And involved in protest, and
I was very lucky enough to have a man that was coming home to me and introducing me to conversations that wouldn't be necessarily had a lot in my community. Yeah. So I had that little gateway to understanding and becoming politically aware and understanding, the protest that my mum were bringing me to, and I was into acting and art from a young age, so I was always like creative, and so my mum would be like sitting down making a poster, and I'd be like, how about and that's where the Nightmare on Elm Street came. Right. I absolutely loved it. I loved the atmosphere. I love feeling like I was fighting for something. And like I said, I was a quiet child, but performing was my outlet. And I became very passionate about things from really early age, and I couldn't stay quiet about them, and I became really loud when it came to things like social issues and whatever I felt needed to be talked about, and one of those things was the 8th Amendment. So that's why I done so much, as much as I could for it.
Lynn Ruan is your mum.
She is.
And just when you're talking about it there, it's work. Yeah. But she has said that you always had an independent streak, even though you were going on the same marches. You would always do your own investigation and do your own research into. So like vegetarianism and things like that, that wasn't part of the family. No.
So acting or being a vegetarian wasn't. I didn't know anyone that was an actor or vegetarian in my family, let alone an actor and a vegetarian. So I absolutely love my mom. She's my role model. I want to be more like her every day. She's driven. She's a powerhouse. She's I love everything about her, and so when people say, "Oh, you're just like your mom," I definitely take it as a compliment. That's if I'm going to be compared to anyone, Lynn Ruan is
that's great.
Is great. So, but I also like to make sure that people know that I'm not an extension of my mom. People are like, you're only fighting for that because your mom is fighting for it. I was like, we're both fighting for it because it's right. So, you know, so yeah, we definitely share a lot of the same views, but I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we do clash on lots of different things, and I always bring up being a vegetarian. I'm like, no, I have my own mind, and you know, I can make decisions for myself.
Yeah.
Thanks. And she has always allowed me that space to explore, and you know.
And did you rebel at all?
Yeah.
Did you?
Probably around the age of 15, 16,
Right.
I started to rebel a little bit.
Right.
And yeah, I don't think my mom was able for it.
Really?
But we're best friends now.
Yeah.
We're really close. And you know, she had me when she was 15.
Yeah.
So I watched her get accepted into Trinity College. I've watched her, you know, find her way and go from job to job and trying to figure it out. And I watched her become a politician, and so I've really gone on such a journey with her.
Yeah.
Like I've watched her from 15
I know.
to 33.
Yeah.
And it's just been incredible, and I can't even describe how proud I am. And it's really something that I'm happy that I got to experience and go on with her. Yeah.
And you lived in Trinity when she went to Trinity. You lived when she was president of the Students' Union.
Yeah, so she was the president of the Students' Union in 2015. So we got accommodation straight right at the front of like the front gate, the front arch, like. And it was beautiful. Like when you woke up in the morning and you look out and it's Trinity College, the campus is amazing. You know, the sun is shining, and I was actually going to go on my mind was set on NCAD to do fine art. Since I started secondary school, but my experience living in Trinity changed it all for me. I was sneaking into English lectures. God,
right,
there
okay.
I am again, blowing my
Blowing
image.
is cool. I didn't even bring it up this time.
So sneaking into English lectures, and then I begged my mum one time, could I go to a Q&A that Baz Luhrmann was doing?
Okay.
And so she let me off school, and I went to school afterwards. We went to the Q&A, and I remember putting up my hand and I asked Baz Luhrmann a question. I said, and it was just in the dining hall, so it was right beside where we lived in Trinity. I said, do you think modernising Romeo and Juliet brought a new audience to Shakespeare? And he was just about to answer, and he was like, are you in a school uniform?
Right.
And I was like, yes. So he was nice enough then to ask me to meet him after with my mum.
Okay.
So I was able to have a chat with him, tell him I'm an actor, you know.
Right. Okay.
Hey, Baz.
Yeah. There's my CV.
So I absolutely fell in love with the place.
Right.
And NCAD Fine Art is still the plan.
Okay.
But for now, I'm really enjoying my course in English.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And does it because like Lynn was one of our first guests on the show, and when she was talking about Trinity, and she obviously wrote about it in the book as well, that sense of it being some place that was alien to her growing up. And when she was here, she talked about her uncle Noel, who I think had lived on Usher's Quay, and like the first time he'd ever been inside Trinity was when he was in his 80s, and he came back and he came in to see her when she was there. So like, was your experience when you were going on marches and when you were kind of getting involved in activism, and then was that very different to people you were growing up with?
Yeah. Like I said, I was lucky enough that, you know, my mom's such an exception because of where she's coming from, and because of being a teen mom. That's why one of the main reasons why she's so well known is because it's not really heard of, and it's such an accomplishment. So I was one of those kids that were very lucky that had this gateway in that not many of us had. So my mom was bringing home these conversations that not many of the people in my area were being introduced to. So I did have that advantage. And you know, me and my mom's experience of going on to Trinity and be kind of taking part in that kind of that life, that way of life is very different. Because my mom kind of stormed through first, and then it became kind of, you know, what would you say, like easier for me to kind of to follow, and and then Jaylen's practically middle class now. My little sister, she'd be able to just walk in and not feel intimidated. so yeah, watching my mum go through Trinity has definitely made it a different experience for me, compared to hers, because I'm a bit more relaxed, and you know, but I have a similar story to my mum.
Yeah.
About our Uncle Noel. I wanted to show, just when I had first got with my boyfriend, I wanted to show him where I was studying. And so I brought him into town. I was like, yeah, you know Trinity College? And he's like, yeah, Trinity College. And we got off the bus and he's like, on Dame Street. And he's like, so where is it? And I'm like, what do you mean where is it? It's right there. And he's like, that's Trinity College. And I'm like, do you not know where Trinity College is? And he was like, no, like I've never been to it. I've never seen it. And I was like, but you've been in town. And he's like, yeah, but how am I meant to know that that's Trinity? And I was like, right, something's not right.
Yeah.
And so I brought him in. He's like, am I allowed in? And I was like, of course you're allowed in.
Right.
He
Yeah.
didn't even know that he was allowed to walk through the campus.
Yeah.
So it just really made me think about working class schools and resources, and introducing them to that world, and not allowing them to believe that they that's not for them, or they don't belong there, or they can't, it's not realistic for them, because then they'll never try if they're told that's, because I remember I was told in school when I said I wanted to go to Trinity, they said, why don't you think about hair and beauty in Crumlin College? And there's nothing wrong with hair and beauty in Crumlin College at all if that's what you wanted to do, but that's not what I wanted to do. And they were basically saying that what I was reaching for wasn't realistic and I needed to lower my standards. So we're told that. And so definitely I think my college friends are sick of me at this stage, because I don't shut up about working class.
Right,
And I was like, we're going to take over. So but I actually done the Trinity Access program. So I have loads of working class friends now in Trinity, and they're doing absolutely amazing. So it's definitely improving, especially with the Trinity Access program.
But that suggests as well, though, like the Trinity Access program is great, and that's brilliant, and that's coming from Trinity itself. But that idea that when you're in school, in certain areas, that you shouldn't, that you should be setting your sights somewhere else. Yeah. Nobody in middle class parts of Dublin would be told, if they said, I want to go to Trinity. Yeah. Well, what about hair and beauty course? Like they wouldn't be thinking like that.
Exactly.
So the change has to come there as much as it does from the third level institutions as well, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think as well, like my mom has talked about this before, but coming from a place where there's poverty means that there's crime. Yeah. And so third level education isn't the most important thing or the priority. Yeah. It's, getting people past sixth year. Yeah. And so there's definitely a lot of work to be done. And when I used to live here, it wasn't funded. There was no money, and when we needed extras, I'd say to Frank Berry, "Come on, we knock into my nanny's. I'll get a few of my cousins out." Yeah. And they all have so much character, so much to give, so much potential. Every one of them. I've never met a place that has so much character than a working class area like Tallaght. Yeah. And it's so sad to see that we're told to lower our standards, because we can do great things. And I hope that gets recognised more as the years go on. But I definitely think that there has been progression, and I'm definitely going to keep fighting to make sure that it continues.
And even just the idea of thinking, are you allowed to walk through Trinity?
Yeah. Like am I allowed? Yeah, it's not right.
No. And like you talk about, you've bored your friends with the idea that the working class are going to take over. Like after repeal, because I read an article you wrote about repeal, before the referendum, and you said you remember on your confirmation day the priest talking about how we'd all grow up, the boys would all grow up to be footballers, and all the girls would marry them.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's incredible. That was in obviously on your confirmation day. You were sitting in church.
Yeah, I just remember when he said it, and I was like, did no one catch that? And I remember my teachers always knew that if I was passionate about something, that I was allowed. So I remember them looking at me like, don't do it. And I'm like, you know.
So what did you say exactly?
I said, I stood up I don't
so
know.
you stood up. He said,
Yeah, he said it, and I
he
stood
said
up.
you're going to grow up to be footballers, or
And the girls are going to marry them.
right.
And I don't particularly know if I knew it was sexist. I probably didn't even know the word, but something didn't sit right with me, because I also had another aspiration, and that was to be an archaeologist.
Right.
And my mom bought me archaeology books all the time for Christmas, for my birthdays. I had, the little tools like the brush, and I was obsessed with dinosaurs, bones, and history. And I was just like, so you're telling me?
You stood up and said this?
No, I didn't stand up and say this.
Okay.
I said, I was just thinking to myself, like, you're telling me that the highlight of my life, like what I aspire to be, is a wife, like to marry a footballer. I want to be an archaeologist. I've read these books. I've put work into it. I've, no. And so I stood up and I said, I want to be an archaeologist. And I remember my teacher took me out into the porch, and she was like, you can't be doing this. And there was a gay flamboyant boy in my class called Aidan, and he's great. And he was like, yeah, and I want to be a singer. And I was like, yes, revolution.
There was a revolution in the church. So that sounds great.
Yeah. So I caused a ripple effect in Kilnarden Church.
And so did anyone else get up, or was it just...
No, that was it then.
Well, that's a good still a start. It was a start.
Yeah.
But so it was always there, like, and
it was always there somewhere, and it probably took a little bit.
Yeah.
But I got there. So it was probably like, 3 minutes after he said it, and I was like
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely had to like
brace myself.
Yeah.
But you did it.
I did it. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'm happy I did.
Yeah.
My mum was like, yes.
I bet she was.
My dad was like,
And the teacher was like, out.
Yeah, out. I remember the dress I wore. It was black and it had skulls and roses on it.
Oh, really?
So I'm really like Emma in a sense.
Yeah.
I was always into darker colours because
Right.
I think that was because my dad was obsessed with horror films and I was watching them. So I always had that kind of, that dark side to me.
Yeah.
So I had a black tutu with skulls and roses on it from Asha and Stephen's Green. And then I had my red Converse on. Yeah.
Right. So it was iconoclastic.
So I'm cool.
You are cool. Oh, that's of course.
Yeah.
That's the message that we got to keep ramming home. But that thing you talked about there of having that, bracing yourself and standing up, and what you talked about earlier about being on your own and all those kind of things. Talk to me about how, when you say you would sometimes feel you would give all, you could swap, you'd like to be just normal rather than having the kind of those two sides of that isolation and that obsessiveness. Talk to me about the other side of it, the less, the more difficult side of it, like with mental health and Asperger's as well.
Asperger's, yeah. So I was only recently diagnosed with Asperger's, and I think I was the only one shocked by it.
Right.
So I remember getting given the diagnosis, and I was like, "What?" My mom's like, "Knew it." I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And I went home to my nanny, and she was like, "Yeah, that's it, that's the one." And I was like, "Oh my god!" But it really it allowed me to kind of learn more about myself. And understand myself a bit more, accept myself. So it's been a hard journey because, I'm like, I don't want to be labelled, and but at the same time, it's definitely helps me understand myself more and come to terms with who I am and my quirks. And
explain it, how it manifests itself and what it is.
Well, I always say that Asperger's for someone is completely different to for someone else.
Okay.
So Asperger's for me is just the basics that everyone kind of knows. So like the awkwardness, social anxiety. I obsess, so I have I can be impulsive, obsessive. And people probably recognize that through like the things that I've done, like my boxing, my activism, my acting. They haven't just been kind of things that I've like dabbled in. It's like I do it.
Perfectionism.
And perfectionism. My way of thinking is probably different to other people. My mind is constantly on overdrive. I don't really get to relax much, so I practice things like mindfulness, and I definitely do all the right things.
Right. Because that's a tough thing to do as well, because a lot of people, when they have that overactive mind, they do the wrong things with it. They'll
and I have, and I do.
Right, okay.
But I have definitely done a lot better this year in terms of looking after myself and kind of taking control of myself again. And colouring really helps.
Right.
Colouring, art, and like I said, acting. And you know, I have these little tics that sometimes I'm embarrassed about, like in my hands, and I used to walk on my tippy toes, and they're all signs of Asperger's. So like flapping, tics, and walking on your tippy toes. And I walked on my tippy toes till I was about 11.
Okay.
Until I, became self-conscious about it and forced myself to start walking properly. And the funny thing is, they shut off during acting and interviews.
Do they?
Yeah. Like when the camera's on, they're gone.
Right.
Yeah. So when you knock this camera off, I'll be like Bambi running around on ice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
And the diagnosis has made a difference.
It's definitely made a difference. It's there. A lot of acceptance came with the diagnosis. And it makes me different. Yeah. And that's a great thing. I've come to believe. And
isn't that one of the things? Because like I find that with anxiety and anything, that like part of the struggle is kind of you beat yourself up about having it in the first place.
Yeah.
And one of the things that helped me was actually just thinking, this is who I am. Yeah. Yeah. And you get a little bit of distance from yourself by thinking, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change it, but it's going to, the worst of it will pass.
Yeah. And I think with, my struggle with mental health and having Asperger's and all these things comes experience. So I have so many qualities because of it. I'm an understanding person. I'm empathetic. I'm a good friend. Yeah. Because, I've learned a lot, and I know a lot about myself because of them. And so they definitely come with some good gifts. Yeah. But like my art, and that, once I get an audition and once I get my role, it's all worth it in the end, because it's fulfilling for me. And so.
And it is fulfilling, and it does you get the fulfillment from the things that you do.
100%.
And is your life itself, has that informed, like everything you experience, does that also inform how you are as an actor, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, it's a version of me. So it's taken all of me into the role and not just playing a character. So I think you're able to see. I think you always see it in an actor's eyes when they're bringing experience into it. So if I have a role where like a hard role where someone dies, I find it in myself, like how that would feel for me and how I would react. And that's all based on experience and what I've been through in my life. So I feel like that shines through in my acting then.
And is it hard to bring that out when you're doing it?
No, I have enough to cry about.
Right,
no, I'm joking. No, it's not. I'm a really emotional, sensitive person. So I am pretty good at like rooting for that and grabbing at that and being able to perform it then. And people would say that's unhealthy and like forcing yourself to feel that way, but I'm not forcing myself to feel that way. It's there and I'm using it. Yeah. And then I can relax after it and feel like I've accomplished something, and it's like I said, it's therapeutic, and it works for me, and it might not work for everyone else, but yeah, it does something for me.
And so you say like NCAD is still a goal.
Yeah.
But acting must still be the thing you're gonna.
No, I want to do NCAD Fine Art. I need to do acting.
Okay.
Yeah, acting's something I need to do.
Right. So it'll always be the thing you do.
It will always be the thing I do. But I love art, so it just be like a nice little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A nice little side.
Yeah.
Anyway, best of luck with Metal Heart. It's
Thank
really
you.
fantastic. It's been great to have you in today. The extremely cool Jordanne Jones. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really enjoyed talking to Jordanne. She is fascinating, and the similarity between her and her mother, Lynn Ruan, is extraordinary. Sometimes when you're sitting there listening to her, and the way she talked about her, I don't think it's you're not pigeonholing her, labeling her by saying there's so many similarities between the two of them, and that commitment to changing the world, if you like, or changing Ireland certainly, is something they share and is something we should all cherish. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to Ireland Unfiltered on all the usual channels, and if you like the show, please leave a review. See you next time.